Hold your breath. The countdown begins. The top 31 sea gods. From 31 to 1, we'll sail across the Mediterranean, the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Arctic. We'll meet the fathers of the deep, the creative forces that shaped the cosmos, the lords of the north, the mothers of water, the keepers of the sea lanes, the powers of the east, and the oceanic deities of Polynesia, until we reach the sovereigns who command both storm and land, Poseidon and Neptune. Ranking criteria? Impact on myth and worship, geographic span, symbolic power, and long-term cultural influence. Every position has a reason. Legends, rituals, epithets, domains, and symbols that guided sailors and civilizations. Feel the rumble of the waves, the salt on your tongue, the pull of canvas sails. We'll descend into the abyss and rise again to the foamy crown of kings. Ready? 3, 2, 1, sail! At number 31 stands Phorcys, a primordial sea god of Greek mythology, ancestor of countless sea monsters and guardian of the deep. For the Greeks, the oldest sea wasn't blue, but black. In that darkness moves Phorcys, the border between what humankind dares and what it fears. Depicted as an aged, fish-bodied being with tusks, he's bound to the lineage of the Gorgons, Grey, and Serpent Guardians. Treacherous cliffs, shattered hulls, and legends of midnight rowers all whisper his name. Phorcys does not rule the sea, he keeps it, reminding mortals that every sudden depth may hide his gaze. At number 30, we meet Magwayen, the ferrying goddess of the Visayan tradition, Philippines, who guides souls across the waters to the afterlife and protects the routes of the living. In the Visayan Islands, the sea is a road. Creaking canoes, whispering reeds, oil lanterns tracing golden circles on the current. Magwayen moves through them in silence, benevolent and solemn. She knows the rhythm of the tides and the grammar of grief, uniting birth and farewell, prosperity and return. Elders say that when a storm opens into a sudden eye of calm, the goddess lays her hand upon the sea. The departed are not lost, only entrusted to her breath. At 29 comes Dakuwaqa, the divine shark of Fijian Polynesian lore. His name embodies a pact between power and respect for the ocean. In the waters of the South Pacific, Dakuwaqa's fin marks the border between arrogance and humility. Legends say he was stopped by an octopus goddess who imposed a single rule: power exists to protect, not to devour. Since then, fishermen honor him with braided cords and polished shells before setting sail. Dakuwaqa is not blind terror, he is balance. His swift wake reminds all who challenge the sea without respect that punishment will come. At number 28, we find Ikatere, father of fish in Maori and Polynesian tradition, who chose the ocean as his dwelling and founded the genealogies of marine life. When earth and sea parted, Ikatere chose depth, a pillar of water where light fades and life of scales takes form. From that choice came schools, fins, and silver trails that shimmer on the surface. Ikatere also represents law. Fishing is both sustenance and ritual. The rule is simple and binding. What you take, honor. What you exceed, return. Beneath the canoes, among kelp forests and drifting algae, his voice echoes measure, gratitude, and responsibility.
At 27 stands Tinirau, guardian of whales in Maori Polynesian myth, lord of abundance and memory. His underwater palace, Motutapu, is not stone, but sacred island, where songs carve the laws of the sea. Tinirau tends whales as a chieftain tends horses, with pride and reverence, demanding fairness in return. Those who profane his care are punished with the precision of tides. Beside him stands Hina, the moon, who governs the breath of the waters. As the tide rises, his voice deepens. Every gift demands repayment, every offense a return.
At number 26, we find Kiaše, a marine power of Hurrian mythology, embodying the sea as an autonomous force, rival to the sky. In the earliest tales, before harbors or maps, the ocean was a sovereign that would not be ruled. Kiaše reminds the storm gods that salt water does not bow. Currents and tides form a faceless architecture that commands respect. Every cosmic clash demands tribute of thunder and foam. On clay tablets where his name appears, the sea is no backdrop, but an active character. Even far from the coast, when the air tastes of brine, it is his dominion you feel. At number 25 is Aruna, the personification of the sea in Hittite mythology. For the Hittites, the great water was both frontier and divine power, a threshold to be crossed and a force to be appeased. In a land ringed by mountains, the sea meant distance, risk, and the promise of exchange. Aruna is not a god with a court. He is the sea itself, the naked meaning of the element. Stories describe him as a horizon that both welcomes and rejects, stage of the eternal contest between calm and storm. His sea is not only to be watched, it must be crossed, because crossing it is the right. In 24th place waits Manannán mac Lir, Lord of the Sea in Celtic, Irish mythology. His mists mark the passages between our world and the other world. The Irish sea hums with distant bagpipes and stubborn gulls. When fog devours the cliffs and the harbor bells fall silent, it is Manannán opening invisible corridors. Guardian of boundaries and master of gentle illusions, he carries a sword that compels truth and a ship that demands a single choice: stay or sail. Many claim never to have seen him, yet every safe return after troubled waters is credited to his unseen protection. At 23 stands Psamathe, Greek goddess of the shoreline. that shifting border between land and water. Her domain is the thin, shimmering beach, where footprints fill with water and foam redraws the lines at every wave. Psamathe embodies transition. She teaches how to pause, choose, and cross. Myths describe her as ever-changing and elusive, like sand slipping through fingers or a seal vanishing in the surf. At dawn, when the air smells of salt and unripe sunlight, her presence is a clear promise. Beyond the tide line, the unknown begins.
At number 22, we meet Galene, Greek goddess of calm seas, ruler of the stillness that follows a storm. Her realm has a specific sound, droplets returning from the rigging, breath finding rhythm again, the wood no longer groaning. Galene brings not forgetfulness, but clarity. Fear settles like sand on the seabed, and the water clears. Queen of tranquil waters, she restores the captain's mind and horizon. In her name, the surface becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, the sailor rediscovers not just survival, but direction. At 21 is Brizo, goddess worshipped on Delos, protector of sleeping sailors and guide through dreams. At night, small baskets are offered on boats or near her temple, not filled with fish, but with wishes for guidance and safe return. Brizo grants not excitement, but clarity. She calms hostile waves and through sleep whispers when to wait, when to change course, when to dock. At dawn, a captain may awaken knowing without knowing why. Brizo's counsel, a silent compass that turns intuition into safe passage.
At number 20 stands Tethys, Titaness of Greek mythology, who personifies the flowing waters, rivers, springs, and streams feeding the ocean. In her, geography becomes genealogy. From her unions are born the nymphs of rivers and the currents that bind the lands. Her dominion is not tempest, but nourishment, water that flows, irrigates, sustains. When a spring bursts clear between mossy stones and smells of fresh rock, it is a sign of her presence. Tethys demands no spectacle, only care. The water we drink returns to the sea and rises again to the clouds. Guarding that cycle honors her memory.
At 19, we find Ceto, an archaic power of Greek myth, mother of sea monsters, and threshold of the unknown deep. In ancient tales, Ceto is not a single creature, but the source of all horrors, with lidless eyes, jagged teeth, and scales that screech like metal. From her comes the lineage that haunts sailors' nightmares. Her purpose is not to terrify, but to mark a limit. Beyond the known routes begins the realm of peril. That's why ancient maps read Hic sunt draconis, not ornament, but warning. Ceto guards the ocean's right to remain mystery, teaching caution to all who challenge it. At 18 comes Triton, the herald of the sea in Greek mythology. His conch shell horn commands the waters, announcing peace or storm. Half man, half dolphin, he rises from the depths to deliver divine messages and truces among the waves. His horn is no ornament, it's a signal. When harbors ring with bells and tugboats strain their ropes, a deep, distant call may sound before the weather turns. Tradition says it's Triton's voice. The sea has its own language of pressure, wind, and foam, and Triton translates it for humankind.
At 17 stands Nereus, the old man of the sea in Greek mythology, symbol of simple, shifting truth. Gentle yet watchful, Nereus changes shape not to deceive, but to escape those who seek answers unworthy of them. To the patient, he grants clear oracles, words like a wind that cleans the air. His wisdom smells of algae and brine, teaching prudence over reckless courage. Nereus guides the understanding of rhythm, tides, currents, and seasons. To know the sea is to accept its limits. His counsel is like a good knot, simple, firm, and reliable.
At number 16, we find Thalassa, personification of the sea itself in Greek mythology. She is not a ruler, but the sea made flesh. In her, naming and being are one. Every bubble rising, every sail curving, every sting of salt on the tongue is Thalassa made manifest. Depictions show her crowned with crabs, but more than her face, it is her essence that matters. Close your eyes on a cliff and listen to the surf. That long, continuous syllable, ancient and hypnotic, is her temple, a reminder that every wave is presence, not decoration. If this voyage among the sea gods is inspiring you, leave a like, subscribe, and share. It really helps our vessel reach new shores. Thank you. At number 15 comes Proteus, the shape-shifting deity of Greek mythology. He knows the future, but reveals it only to those who hold on to him with persistence. His first instinct is flight. He shifts form, fire, lion, wave, to escape capture. This metamorphosis is no trick, it's a test of endurance. Once the seeker prevails, Proteus speaks plainly, showing the route ahead. Keeper of seals along the misty shores, he knows the secrets of currents, seasons, and landfalls. A stern teacher, he speaks little, but decisively. With Proteus, the sea's knowledge comes twisted and then straightens like a sail catching a new wind. In 14th place stands Mazu, protector of sailors from the Fujian region of China. She watches over departures, guides returns, and hears prayers uttered in open sea. Born a mortal girl, she became a guardian spirit after saving her kin. Since then, fishermen call her name before leaving port. Her invisible boat escorts fleets, flanked by 2 attendants, one who sees afar and one who hears the wind. On the pier, sailors burn incense and paper offerings before a red shrine, asking for clear routes, full nets, and above all, safe return.
At number 13 appears Lear, mighty sea power of Celtic Irish mythology. Not a hero, but the ocean itself, seen as a father. In the sagas, his name echoes as an epithet for the sea, the weight of waves crashing on cliffs. His most famous tale is that of the children of Lear, transformed into swans and condemned to wander for centuries across lakes and coasts. Their mournful song stretches a memory that never fades. Lear represents both origin and vastness, what nourishes and what terrifies. Before him, words are useless. Only respect, measure, and silence remain. At 12, we find Watatsumi, or Owatatsumi, the lord of the deep in Japanese mythology and sea spirit of the Shinto faith, often identified with Ryujin, the dragon who rules the currents. He dwells in Ryugu-jo, his underwater palace, where the weight of water is law. In the currents of Japan, in typhoons and cold seas, Watatsumi commands water dragons and the tide jewels, talismans that govern ebb and flow. When he hosts a hero, he does so like the sea itself, first testing, then rewarding. Shells brought to shore echo his verdict, a dull heartbeat from the deep. His palace glows not with torches, but with pressure and silence, an ethereal brightness without light. At number 11 stands Mami Wata, figure of West African traditions and the diaspora, symbol of beauty, power, and dual reward. Often depicted as a radiant woman with dark hair, sometimes coiled with a serpent, she embodies wealth, seduction, and vigilance. To those who honor her, she grants prosperity and protection. Those who mock her face ruin or loss. For many communities, her waters are mirrors of identity, healing, and allure. Rituals summon her with bright fabrics and drums that mimic the surf. In her gaze, the sea demands respect, and in return gives back dignity and strength. Breaking into the top 10 is Oceanus, the Titan of Greek mythology. For the ancients, the ocean was a single vast river encircling the world. In early cosmographies, Earth was an island, and all around it flowed Oceanus, without source, without mouth. Depicted with griffin horns and a serpentine tail, he embodies the perimeter, the liquid border of existence. All waters bear his name. Follow a brook to its river, the river to its mouth, the current to where the horizon curves, and you return within his ring. Oceanus is the groove on which life travels, a circle that promises return. At number 9 stands Amphitrite, queen of the sea in Greek mythology, symbol of order and stability within the waters. In myth, she first rejects Poseidon, then accepts sovereignty beside him. From that choice comes the domesticated sea, regular routes, safe harbors, and shared rules. Around her, Tritons and Nereids form a disciplined court,
proof that even the sea requires measure. Amphitrite is not storm, but equilibrium. Where she reigns, winds take turns, currents do not tear, and horizons remain clear. The steady line that promises, after every voyage, there is still a port.
At number 8, we meet Tethys, nymph of Greek mythology, mother of Achilles, and intercessor between gods and men. Her strength is not fury, but care. She soothes, pleads, and obtains. When she asks Hephaestus for new armor for her son, the ringing hammer sounds like rolling surf, not poetry, but salvation forged in rhythm. In Tethys, the sea is cradle and covenant. It wraps to protect, pushes to grow, releases when the time has come. If you've ever stood at the last step of a pier, feeling both fear and comfort, you know her voice, the protection that accompanies even in farewell.
At 7, we find Ran, the Norse goddess whose golden net gathers those whom the sea keeps and watches over all who do not return. In the tales of the North, Ran is no executioner, she is a keeper. She does not judge the lives she claims, she preserves them in salt and silence. Her 9 daughters bear the names of the waves, and her halls gleam like hammered silver. Sailors speak her name softly, with reverence and a trace of fear, for they know the ocean sometimes calls back its own. When the count of a storm remains short by one, it is Ran's ancient duty that has spoken. At number 6 stands Aegir, the Norse power who presides over the feasts of the sea, bright and perilous alike. In his hall, light dances like gold on water, ale flows endlessly, and cups never empty. Yet this wonder carries warning. The ocean's generosity is temporary. Aegir teaches a double discipline, to celebrate when the waters are kind, and to accept when they grow demanding again. The surface glitters, the depths remain mute. Between these two levels, every voyage is decided. Those who forget this limit toast their own folly. Those who remember it return ashore intact.
At number 5 stands Sedna, the great figure of Inuit tradition, whose legend explains the origin of seals, walruses, and whales, the lifeblood of Arctic survival. In most versions, Sedna is thrown into the sea. Clinging to the edge of the boat, her fingers are cut off, and as she sinks, each piece becomes a creature of the north. Since then, Inuit shamans have combed Sedna's hair in ritual, soothing her pain so that the hunt may succeed. The Arctic smells of iron and snow. Her story teaches a simple pact, respect in exchange for life. Nothing is taken from the sea without offering peace to her spirit. At number 4 appears Tangaroa, sovereign of the ocean in Polynesian mythology, axis of tides, creatures, and divine lineages. In the myths, he is father of fish and lord of the currents. From him flow the routes and cycles that bind the islands together.
when outrigger canoes carved perfect triangles across distant archipelagos. That geometry is his signature. Tangaroa is generous but demanding. Every net cast is a prayer, every storm a warning. For Polynesians, Tangaroa is the spine of the world of water.
At number 3 rises Tiamat, the ancient power of Babylonian mythology, the salt sea primordial, mother of life and theater of chaos. In Mesopotamian poems, she gives birth to gods and monsters alike. When she rises as a dragon or leviathan, it is not from malice, but from nature's need for space. Defeated by Marduk, she does not vanish. Her body becomes the structure of the cosmos, half sky, half earth, and her remaining waters continue to nourish creation. From Tiamat, we learn that order is born from the untamed. The sea is not enemy, but origin, and her name endures as the memory of beginnings.
At number 2 stands Neptune, Roman lord of the seas. He inherits the trident and dominion from the Greeks, but translates them into order. Once a god of fresh water, akin to the Etruscan Nethans, he later became patron of the ocean and fleets. In Rome, he was honored with the Neptunalia, held in midsummer when shade was worth more than gold. Under his gaze, ports grew organized, routes became water roads, and naval power turned into a system. His chariot is drawn by hippocamps, not blind rage, but disciplined strength. If Poseidon is Greek tempest, Neptune is Roman governance. The same sea made law, structure, empire.
And at number 1 stands Poseidon, sovereign of the waters in Greek mythology, the Earthshaker. His trident rules seas, earthquakes, and horses. From a chariot drawn by hippocamps, he rides the white crests and commands silence from the waves. He is not only tempest, but energy that breaks and then renews, able to destroy a harbor or open a spring. The Greeks both feared and appeased him, offering sacrifices so that voyages might find fair winds and the land remain steady. In legend, sunken cities and newborn isles mark his passage. On the horizon, his presence is the balance between fear and course.
If you've come this far, you've climbed with me a stairway of salt, from the fathers of monsters to the kings of the tides, from the mothers of water to the keepers of the sea lanes. Thank you for journeying through these myths and currents. If this voyage moved you, leave a like, subscribe, and share this episode with those who love the sea and mythology. In the comments, tell me which deity impressed you most and why. Your stories are the next course we'll set sail for.